Welcome to episode 4 of Wrestling with the Mind, a podcast where we raise awareness and explore the world of mental health. My name is Matt Sigmund, health coach by day, professional wrestler by night. Today I'm excited to sit down and have a chat with my good friend Jimmy Jacobs. I feel he has a wonderful perspective when it comes to his mental health journey, and I can't wait to share that with you. Before we jump into things, just a little bit of housekeeping for you. We are seeing a wonderful amount of new traffic on the website and subscriptions to the podcast, but there is still so much more room to grow. So please continue to share and subscribe. Leave reviews. That helps us as well on all the podcast services, whichever one is your favorite. We're now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, Amazon, and more. Also, if you are on Facebook, visit our Facebook page and give us a like on there. That helps us grow this community and our ability to help others. Last week, we received pretty good feedback around our guided meditation to kick things off. And I thought it could be helpful to do a little bit of that today before we jump into the chat with Jimmy Jacobs. If participating in the guided meditation is not your thing, you can fast forward a minute or two and jump right into the chat with Jimmy. If it is your thing, I encourage you to sit back, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, release any tension or stress you may be feeling. Allow your mind and body to relax as we begin this guided meditation. Take another deep breath in and exhale slowly. As you focus on your breath, let your mind become calm and centered. Breathe in peace, breathe out tension. Starting from the top of your head, bring your attention to each part of your body. Scan down from your head to your toes, noticing any areas of tension or discomfort. As you breathe in and breathe out, imagine releasing the tension and stress. Visualize a place that brings you peace and calm. It could be the beach, a forest, or even your backyard. Imagine yourself there, surrounded by serenity. Take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, feel yourself become more and more relaxed. Take one final deep breath in, and as you exhale, imagine letting go of any remaining stress or tension. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes, feeling calm, centered, and refreshed. Now that we're feeling calm and centered, let's jump into our chat with Jimmy Jacobs. All right, I'm sitting down with my good friend, Jimmy Jacobs. Jimmy, it's been a while since we've actually seen each other in person, but it's good to see your face here on video. I know people are listening on audio only, but I get to see you nonetheless. How you been doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm going through some changes in my life. I moved out to rural Georgia last year, so I'm adapting to the new environment and the challenges and new adventure that goes along with it.
Yeah, and you've got where did you live before? Were you a big city guy, and now you're a small town like Green Acres? Is this?
Yeah, right. So I was in suburban Phoenix before. That was in like uh, urban Chicago before that, and then Stamford, Connecticut, and Detroit, and so yeah. This is new for me, new adventure.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day from the farm life down there in Georgia to hop on and chat with me. You know, we have a lot of people here, of course, from the wrestling community, but we also have a lot of people listening in that have no clue about wrestling. They just want to talk or listen to mental health kind of perspectives. And for those people, give us a little bit of a bird's eye view here of Jimmy Jacobs.
Oh, of Jimmy Jacobs. Who cares about Jimmy Jacobs? When I saw you with you were doing this podcast. I'm so glad you invited me on, because this is the sort of stuff I like talking about. Mental health and the proper way of being as we navigate through this experience that we call life. And look, I've been in the professional wrestling business for 24 years now, but I consider the journey of self-discovery and self-navigation, let's say, to be a far more rewarding pursuit than professional wrestling, as much as I love professional wrestling.
And I'm kind of in the same boat now too. I'm looking just at the journey, and the wrestling's cool and it's great, but it's also the experience and that whole outside of the ring endeavor that I've picked up the most from, just the friends and memories and experiences I've picked up along the way. What does good mental health look like for you?
Well, so let me preface this. First of all, I was saying everything I'm going to share is just my experience, which informs my perspective. I'm not trying to sell anybody on anything or convince anybody of anything. I'm just sharing where I'm at, and where I'm at's evolved through the years, and it's going to evolve further from this. I might look back at this one day and go, "Oh wow, I don't think like that at all anymore."
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. So what I'm going to say, it might be for you and it might not be for you. And either way, that's absolutely okay. So I just want to preface it with that. Because so even the term mental health isn't a term I generally use. It seems to reify the compartmentalization of health, as if there's mental health over here and there's physical health over here and there's spiritual health here, and as if they're all these different things, but really the parts don't make sense outside of the whole. So, and we have to go, well, what is health to begin with? We're kind of given a paradigm in this world that, by the kind of the modern cultural ether that says, well, health is just the absence of symptoms. Right. And to me, that's not a very gratifying definition of health. To me, health seems to be something more like having vitality throughout my day and having the resilience to work through difficult things, not to not suffer or to not go through hard times, but to be able to do that with a certain amount of grace and resilience. So mental health to me is just a part of a holistic perspective on how I take care of myself and how I'm living in alignment with the sort of thing that I am, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and I love that perspective and just the general look at it too, how we live in this world where people, they're starting to take mental health a little bit more serious. They're starting to kind of pile it in with everything else. But when you say the word health to somebody, people think doctors, medicine, just general sickness. They don't think about the mental aspect of it, or just the personal experience and journeys that we're all on, truly outside of the realm of what medicines are we taking today, and the commercial side of it, right? And so I've always wanted to hear everybody's different experiences and journeys, and I think you have a very unique one as well. You've been in, and this is not a wrestling podcast, but you have been in the business for many, many years, and you have done so many different aspects of it, with writing and just creative in general, wrestling, doing the whole independent, live in a car pretty much scene, as well. How has the wrestling business itself impacted your mental health, good or bad?
Well, it's my relationship to the things that go on that impact it, right? So if I perceive my career through a frame of lack, as if there's some goal at the end of it that must be attained, lest I be unworthy or not enough, well, in that case, my relationship to wrestling will leave me feeling lack, right? But there are components of of professional wrestling that seem to inherently, things like connection is great. I loved, being on the road with you guys up in Canada for Danny. And,
Yeah.
these sort of things, and pursuing something, like having a general pursuit, a general aim. These things seem to be in alignment again with the sort of being that we are, right? Like we're these human animals in one sense. Of course, there's a deeper sort of spiritual aspect to us as well. But even in the materialistic aspect of it, we're human animals, and so we need to be oriented in a certain way. It's not just like we're these infinitely malleable things that can do whatever we want and not experience the consequences for it. So wrestling was something that gave me both an aim, a direction. It also gave me relationships and connection, and I think those are crucial elements to being in alignment with what is.
Yeah, yeah, and I was talking to Tim Storm about it last week just a little bit, and some of the good parts about wrestling. There's a lot of bad, but it's like with any other job profession. There's good and there's bad that come along with it. But that sense of community that you do establish and build up over time, that brotherhood, and the girls too, everybody mixed in is a powerful thing. I think the sense of purpose and having that. Maybe not an end goal, but having some goals that you can reach and set for can keep that motivation side of you up. But then there's those long days. There's those Canada tours where you're just sitting in a car for 36 hours or whatever it may be, and it kind of can drag on and wear down on you mentally. The relationships that you make outside of wrestling take a nasty hit sometimes because of distance, the business in general, and just bad choices we make across the board from time to time. So there is good and bad with it, and I like your sense of perspective here as well. When you look at self-care, and going through the pandemic, I remember you were always posting, maybe not always, but you were posting a lot of videos in like 2020, 2021 of just taking care of yourself, prioritizing self-care. You're talking about anxiety and things. And it may not seem like a lot, but at the time, so many people were going through such a hard time. That was really cool to see when nobody else was really doing that, number one. How do you prioritize self-care now? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, 2020 was an interesting year. I went from being on the road like half my life to just being grounded for a few months, right? Yeah. And during that time, it's like, I have the choice of whether to cave into myself and, play on my phone and watch crappy reruns all day, or go, well, why don't I take the time to, work on me and discover me a little bit more? And so that was a very fruitful time in my life, where I started to at 36 years old, get a sense of what it meant to take care of myself. And that, we need constant maintenance like anything else, man. Like taking care of your car or making sure, I just bought this house and it's like, oh, this needs to be cleaned. Like not just one thing, right? It's all the time, right? It's constant maintenance. It's constant care. And self-care is paramount, because everything else in your life cascades from that. You might go, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for that. No, that's the thing you need to have time for, lest everything else fall apart, because everything in your life falls from how you are doing. If I am not doing well, then what I do, I won't do well, right? And so there are different components, of course, for me personally, and in my particular way of going about things. But I think there's some general things we can talk about insofar as, the stuff you're putting into your body, right? Number one, not number one, in no particular order. There's a lot of food-like stuff, food substitutes with, unnatural chemicals and things like that. And so I do my best to eat mostly holistic I'm sorry, Whole Foods. Um, there's moving your body. Stuff gets stuck in here, and we're meant to be mobile creatures. Part of the prevailing paradigm in the world seems to be something like, if things aren't going well, you need some sort of intervention, right?
Right. Yeah.
You need to intervene. You need to take this or this. But to me, it seems like we need to get closer to what we are. And if you think about what a human animal is, it's like, well, how would a human animal live? How would it eat? How would it go about its day? It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
spending a lot of time outside. It's moving a lot. It's eating whole foods. It's being with community, with family, serving a purpose in that community, with that family, with a layer of like interdependence in the tribe. And the closer you can mimic those sorts of things, the better off you are. The further look, I'm not saying nature is all great and all good. It's also, look, I love having a home. I love having air conditioning. I love having clothes. But there's a trade off to all those things. And yeah, so when I think of self care, I start to think in those sorts of terms. And I think one of the sort of deeper perspectives too is like purpose.
Yeah.
You have all these things, but if you're aimless, or not orient, or if you're oriented in multiple directions, right? If you're oriented in multiple directions, that's sort of like anxiety. And if you're oriented in sort of in no direction,
Yeah.
that's something like.
So true, and you put them in no particular order, in quotation marks. But you did mention nutrition first, and I feel personally that is something that people they don't take too serious. Number one, and part of the problem is the education we have around that. I like the way you were talking about just the Whole Foods approach. Being a wrestler, being on the road, we are used to, or at least used to processed food. I mean, we're traveling; it's constant. Grab what we can, get what we can while we can. But the more that I research just on what works for me over the last few years, the more it's, hey, the American diet typically is way too processed. We have too many refined sugars and additives and chemicals, preservatives, all that junk, and God only knows what it's truly doing to our systems in general. We are, as a whole, in this country specifically, super deficient just in fiber because we don't take in vegetables. We're not eating fruits every day. We're not eating grains that are good for us. We're going for the quick, cheap, easy options. And on that note too, healthy eating does not have to be super crazy expensive. You can go and get fruits, vegetables, some good grains from even like Aldi or Trader Joe's, wherever you like to shop, but it doesn't have to be too hard. And in general, the overall perspective on self-care for me, at least from my way of thinking, right? It doesn't have to be hard. It can be so easy if you sit back and just look at how we're truly programmed and designed before, commercialism gets into play, before the education from various organizations and things. But it doesn't have to be crazy hard. So I love the way that you put that and address that as well. In terms of, there's people listening to this who are going through hard times, who are struggling mentally with anxiety or just severe depression or maybe even ADHD. What advice would you tell them? Any just general thoughts?
Yeah, well, let me take a minute to answer this because it's
Take your
something
time.
that, yeah, I've got a particular sort of interest in. Look, for most of my life, I would have considered myself depressed, right? That was my story. And for about 10 years, I was on antidepressants that worked, with varying degrees. But I don't, for all those years, and it was difficult, but depression seemed as though it was something that was happening to me. Like it's this thing outside of me and it's like happening to me.
Right.
It's completely out of control. And it wasn't until 2020 that I sort of reframed how I viewed the experience that I was having with this thing that I called depression, and viewed it less as a thing that was happening to me and just sort of a set of symptoms that an experience that I was having. Mm-hmm. And the more my relationship has grown with it, the more I understand it not to be something that's happening to me. It's an experience that's being created from within me, and an experience that is directly informed by what I am doing, what I'm putting into my body, what my thoughts are, all the inputs that I'm taking in. My body's responding in an appropriate way. There's no malfunction going on. It's not, I find the chemical imbalance theory of depression to be untenable, on shaky ground at best. It's, to me, I see it in real time how my body responds when I'm taking care of myself and when I'm oriented properly, when I'm surrounding myself with people and connecting with people and, moving my body and all that stuff. I see how my body responds, and I see how it responds when it doesn't. It's responding appropriately to what is being put into it. So I don't see it as a malfunction. I don't see any of these things. I know that might be a difficult thing to hear, because it would have been a difficult thing if I heard someone say this to me, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, saying, hey man, this is, your experience has to do with what's going on with you. It's not a thing that's happening to you, so to speak. It's within you. Yeah. And it's daunting, but it's empowering, because it means that I have the capability of changing my experience based on what I input into my system. And so that's part of what I would say to people, is that you're not broken. There isn't something that's going on that's like wrong with you. There's an experience you're having, and you're having it for a reason. When I go through symptoms that at one point in my life I would have called depression, I understand that as a message from my body going, hey man, what are you doing? You just need to slow down and hang out here for a bit, because you can hang out here as long as you want, while you figure this out. And once you want to get going, I'll get going with you. And that's how it works. That's how my experience has worked, where I see that play out in real time. So that's partly what I would tell people, is you are more powerful than you think you are. And there are tools out there, and you are capable of managing this experience. But part of it starts with not demonizing it, and starting to be inquisitive about it and going, what is this trying to tell me? What is this anxiety that I'm experiencing? One of the things I did, I told you I was going to take a minute to talk about this, because I have a lot to say about it.
I'm just sitting here listening. I'm loving it. Keep going.
One of the things I did was I stopped identifying as the depression. I stopped saying things like, I am depressed. By saying that, it makes those words create my reality, in the sense that it identifies me as depression. It's like, I am depressed. That is what I am. And starting to say, well, no, sometimes I experience low energy. Sometimes I experience this. Sometimes I experience that. And then I can look at this experience I'm having without it being attached to me, and going, so what is this experience? What is this experience of low energy? What is this experience of lack of motivation? So people talk about things like my depression, my anxiety, and like even it's like a linguistic trap. It's like you're casting a spell on yourself by using those words, and it grips you onto this thing. And so if I can first just go, oh, I'm experiencing this anxiety. What's this anxiety I'm experiencing? What is it telling me? And I can slow down and be curious about this, and start to work through it instead of fighting against it.
Yeah, and that is That's a very powerful. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And that's a very powerful way to look at it and approach it. And just that whole mindset of, I love the I am depressed, just painting that picture on you. Do you think that that is something that just as a culture has been pushed on people? That's the way the companies and things want you to see this as, like, I am depressed so I can, so at the end of the day they can make money. But yeah, I love the way.
Yeah, well, there's psychotropic drugs that they can give you. And, when I first, and again, antidepressants held their space for me for a time. So this isn't like finger pointing, going, you shouldn't be on this, you shouldn't do this, like, better. That's not what I'm saying at all. But once I removed myself from those drugs, there was a certain amount of anger as I started to take care of myself and work through this thing that I call depression. And then I was all of a sudden, I'm feeling better than ever. A certain amount of anger arose in me to go, no doctor I went to ever asked, hey, what are your eating habits? Yeah. What's your lifestyle? What are you doing? And so, yeah, I do think there is just sort of a cultural program to identify with your maladies, let's say. And I don't think that's helpful. And again, this isn't to, like, blame or point fingers.
Right. And there are doctors out there who will dive into that with you and will get deep into hey, what are your eating habits? What's your activity look like each day? How's your social life? What are you engaging in outside of the house? And they will dive into that. And there are medicines, when managed appropriately and combined with things, it works for some people, and that is wonderful. It is great. But I love hearing different perspectives too, of just seeing what's working for you compared to what's working for Tim or Jason, whoever.
Yeah, man. Again, yeah, it's just my experience, and the more I go down the road, the more I start to trust my body and not see my body as this like malfunctioning machine that I need to intervene on what it's doing, but understand that actually it's working exactly how it should be working, whether I understand that or not. But the more I am curious about it and start to understand it, I see it's doing something for a reason, not for no reason. It's an innate intelligence that I'm not consciously aware of, and I'm learning to respect and trust that. And that's a process, because I think we're taught our whole lives to sort of like be scared of what our body's doing. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, you have a cough, you need to take a cough suppressant. It's like,
right.
Or your body's functioning properly by dispelling something with a cough, and you're getting in its way when you take cough suppressant, right? So yeah, it's a whole new relationship with my body. But yeah, man, look, taking care of yourself is difficult. It's easier said than done sometimes when you're going through these sort of experiences like depression. One of the things that I did and sometimes still do when I'm feeling like I just can't even get out of bed, because there are days like that sometimes still. Is there are things I would do in bed to sort of heighten my energy. One of the things I like to do is like beat my chest. It's like a little like qigong exercise to get the qi going, moving through the body, and just like lay in bed, just like pound my chest. And after you do it, you feel like the tingles, and starts to move you a little bit. And I'll do breath work, like either breath of fire or sort of like Wim Hof breathing, like in bed, and just, I can still lay in bed because I don't feel like getting up. But as I start to do those things, the energy starts to come through, and those sort of little things start to compile, and that's the momentum you need to start to move in the direction that you want to move in.
Man, I love that, because I'm always looking, and the people have been messaging me, asking me questions and things, and I'm no doctor, I'm no mental health expert. I'm just doing this to raise some awareness around the things. But people are always asking me for strategies and tips, and that's something different that I haven't heard yet. Just being able to, laying in bed and still being able to accomplish something and get something going, So that's wonderful. Social media, and I don't want to dive too much in here now, but it can be used for good and it can be used for bad. And I talked about some of the videos you put out, during the pandemic that were pretty powerful and just wonderful to see. Lately, I see more videos from you doing things like playing the ukulele. I know right around Christmas you were playing like Muppet Christmas Carol stuff, which popped me pretty big. I loved it. I think I texted you, told you about it. What do you find value in with social media now? How do you like presenting that and implementing that into your life?
With what I put out in the world, I just try to put out in the world things that I think are uplifting or true. Something that's filled with love or filled with truth. Those are sort of the two primary principles that I attempt to orient myself towards as best as possible. There's a dark side to social media. I mean, look, our brains have been hijacked. There's no doubt about it. Our brains are not meant for the sort of stimulus that they take in all the time. We are overstimulated. Our nervous systems are just completely overstimulated. So you have to have an awareness of that, of flipping through and getting that dopamine fix, and just I can do that
all day.
Once I discovered Instagram, like those little videos, it's just like, oh, and they just keep and they know what I like. Oh, this is and you can get lost in it in the same way you used to get lost in drugs or get lost in gambling. And so our brains are not meant to contend with the sort of stimulation that's at our fingertips right now, and got to be aware of it. So look, things like, meditation are so important, and relaxing into your body, because of all the constant stimulation you get. I mean, just think about the human animal and how much stimulation it probably got, years and years ago as it, was becoming what it is. And think of the stimulation we get now. It's a different world. We're in a world we're not meant to be in. And so there's all sorts of ways our brain has been hijacked. We see things on social media and it's like, what does it mean on social media when someone says something bad about you?
Right.
Like, even that is a program inside of us that has been hijacked. Like, look, we're supposed to care about what other people think of us in a certain level because we're interdependent with our tribe, right? And so I need tribe to like me, because if they don't, that means death for me. Right. Now, what does it mean when 100 people online, it's like, it doesn't mean anything actually. Yeah. And of course, 100 people in the world, if I'm in the world, are going to not like me, and that's fine. But our monkey mind is in here going, oh no, this means death.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's real disorienting, and it's not clear exactly what social media just means in general. And we're going through, we're the lab rats in this experiment. So I would say tread lightly.
Absolutely are. And there's a lot of negative. I think we are being desensitized to so many things through social media with everything. I mean, violence, sex, just our attention spans are a lot shorter. That's bad. But I do appreciate, and I just want to thank you just for putting some good out in the world with it. Because when I see, I scroll on, I try not to stay on it too much throughout the day, but I do scroll through Instagram, and it's like, oh, well, Jimmy posted something. Oh, he's holding the ukulele. This is going to make me smile today. So that's always good. Where can people find you for these uplifting posts? Plug some stuff here.
On the occasions that I do post on social media, which is sort of few and far between, my Instagram is Jimmy Jacobs X. And I've got that for now. Who knows how much longer I go on and off of social media. I've been off of Twitter now more or less for the
that's for a
few
best.
Years. Yeah, that place became in this echo chamber, this like cesspool. It really brings out the worst in people, doesn't it?
It does. It does. So especially in the environments that we are around. I thank you.
Yeah, man. People need love in their lives.
I thank you so much just for cutting out a little bit of time. I would love to have you on again just to do deeper dives into some of the nutrition side, some of the whole foods, and some of just the approaches you take as time goes on and we build this up. This means a lot to me, but it means a lot to a lot of people that are listening in. You are always a wonderful person to see and I got to put you over, but you're always a wonderful person to see in the locker room. Anytime I know I'm going to get to share an event with you, I want to pull up the chair as close as I can, just because I know out of all the negativity that can be in all these locker rooms that we are in sometimes, you're always going to be a fun person to sit around and uplifting. And it's good to see you here. And thank you for the time again today, my friend.
Hey, man, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate you for putting out this work and doing what you feel is right and good and important to do in this life. It's a real treat. It's a blessing to watch.
My pleasure. We're in this together. We're a community and building it slowly, and we'll get there together. All right. I just want to thank Jimmy yet again for hopping on here today and sharing some time with us and telling a little bit of his story. I hope that you guys were able to get something good and powerful out of that. I know I did. Coming up, we have many more wonderful interviews with great people, and we're going to be adding in a few additional segments to the podcast as well. I'm working with some mental health experts to bring on some tips and strategies and things that I'm excited to add into the mix here and bring to you. As I mentioned at the front of the podcast, be sure to go to wrestlingmind.com for all ways you can connect to the podcast, subscribe, review, download, share, hop onto our social media, give us a boost there. This is a community project. We need all the help we can get so we can reach out and help others. I thank you guys for tuning in today, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.